Hey guys, what's going on? I'm Vince.
I'm Gregory.
I'm Mark.
And we're doing vlog. This is episode 1, so this is actually our official vlog right now. So again, we're going to be talking about video games,
TV series,
and movie series.
So our first topic is going to be actually about Star Wars, compared as far as like the new stuff and the old stuff. So I guess we'll start with Mark. You can take it away.
Well, I think it's good to note that for many years we thought we were only going to have 6 movies. That was it. There were the original trilogy, the trilogy, and then there was the prequels.
True.
George Lucas had his hand in the creativity with all those, and that was his. He was envisioning, telling the story with the climax with the original series, and then filling in Anakin's story with the parts 1, 2, and 3.
Right.
After that, there were no plans of a follow-up movies. There were several stories between comic books and expanded universe novels and video games and all kinds of stories about what else happened and what was going on in other places. And then years later, when Lucasfilm was acquired by Disney for a lot of money,
of course,
Disney decided to, with certain permissions from a perspective, they decided to do their versions of what episode 7, 8, and 9 would be, with Rise of Skywalker episode 9 coming out this December. They came out and said that none of those expanded universe stories are considered canon, part of the official story. So
right. Well, I think that's mostly because like Disney wants to have full control of everything in a way. Mm-hmm. So instead of having being different things where people can own this, I feel like Disney is just like, no, they cut everything off so they can make most of the profit and have most control of everything. Mm-hmm. But dude, what were you saying about as far as like your theory about the first 2 movies compared to the last one that came out, as far as like the original?
So I have this theory. I've spoken to a few Star Wars fans on this. Mind you, my theory has been debunked more or less because there's some proof to how the originals are. But because it is my theory, I like my theory. I like my idea. Make a long story short, if you pay attention to the first trilogy, I'm talking like the old school ones from the 70s and the early 80s. I have this theory that basically movies 1 and 2 are very original. They're very much part of the original plot to the stories. But 3, I feel like, is basically an alternative to maybe what could have been if the actor Harrison Ford was not in the 3rd movie. There's speculation out there that basically Luke and Leia were meant to be a romantic couple from movies 1 and 2, technically, and not brother and sister. The reason why they were declared brother and sister in the 3rd movie is because Harrison Ford had his contract renegotiated so that he could act in the movie. Hence, that's why he was frozen in the 2nd movie, because it left it open to him being rescued or him being dead in the 3rd movie, and Luke and Leia would be a couple in the 3rd movie. But since Harrison Ford decided to came back, that's when they declare them brother and sister. Because if you think about it, they never mention Luke having a sister in the 1st movie and not in the 2nd movie, only the 3rd movie. If I just want to make one quick comment about Disney, is that when it comes to Disney, since they have all the creative rights to Star Wars now, like for you guys, for those of you that are watching us right now, in the comments section, ask yourselves this. When it comes to Star Wars, will Disney do more spin-off movies, or do you think they'll try to add more to Rey and everything, and before you know it, we'll basically have episodes 10, 9, 10, 11, and 12 in the future?
Well, that's what they're talking about, because they don't want to stop with episode 7, 8, and 9. They want to keep going with digital streaming series, The Mandalorian. They want to continue with the anthology series like Rogue One and Solo and Beyond, which could have a lot of potential. But then they're talking about like doing more trilogies of the films, and it could be really good, but then it could also become oversaturated. And if they do it the right way, they'll keep striking the chord, and they'll have good additions to the series. But
well, at the same time, I mean, it's just like, if you think about it, like Hollywood, being like an actor standpoint or just in the film industry, it's really hard to sometimes come up with original ideas. So I feel like it's one of those things where, and I don't always support this, but they're kind of like, well, this kind of works, so let's keep trying it until it doesn't work. And that's what happened. I mean, you think about it, they're doing the same thing with Lord of the Rings. They did 6 movies. They did the 3 Lord of the Rings movies, 3 Hobbit movies, and now they're talking about doing like a spin-off series. They did the same thing with Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones went on for 8 years, and now they're making a prequel series. You know what I mean? Everyone's, I feel like, is just trying to draw as many people as they can, and just keep, going off of the fumes or the hype of the success of maybe one or several projects that they do have in the works.
There is one other thing too that has been bugging me, and this kind of, it's Disney, and this kind of ties in with Marvel, Star Wars. Here's my point. Star Wars. Let's focus on this for just one moment. It's usually PG-13, like right around that range. Here's my question. Do you ever think the possibility, and I'm asking both of you this, do you think it's possible that Disney could ever cross that line and create a rated R movie? Because granted, they bought the rights to Deadpool, so will they keep going with Deadpool being rated R films? And with that being said, do you think they could ever make a Star Wars spin-off movie that would be more rated R, hence a Darth Vader solo, standalone movie, or a Boba Fett or Jango Fett type movie, but more gritty?
It certainly is possible. There's a lot of dark universe stories that they could tell that get pretty gruesome. I mean, you think about half the reason they're not rated higher, like PG-13 or R all the time, is because after lightsaber duels, it singes. It doesn't leave blood. It's not
right.
a
There's
bloody
not
fight.
gore.
It's not like sword fighting where if they decapitate somebody, there's a lot of gore.
Yeah, right.
Whereas with lightsabers, it's an instant,
right.
and there's a hand gone, but no blood. There's a head chopped off.
Well, as far as like what you were saying before, I feel like the spin-off movies, I feel like really the only character that would be able to do that would be Jango Fett or Boba Fett, which I don't think they're going to use Jango Fett because technically they made a PS2 video game where you play as him.
That's
But
right.
Boba Fett, because yeah, he uses his lightsaber because he stole it from other Jedis, but he's more of like using pistols, using knives, using stuff like that. So I feel like if they did, they make it almost like a gory mercenary type like movie if they use Boba Fett. I feel like he's really the only character. Like they want to have one of Darth Vader because after the prequels, you already know he's Darth Vader. He's gonna do the same thing. He goes around, kills Jedi's, and that's it.
Yeah.
So I feel like that would be the only one.
Right.
But so now we're gonna talk about Castlevania. So the thing about Castlevania, that's been around since what, early Nintendo or Super Nintendo?
Oh, Nintendo, yeah.
Since
the late
Nintendo.
80s, early
Yeah.
90s, it was.
So I don't know if you guys know anything about that, but pretty much the main character is usually in the most of the movies is Belmont. I think it's Simon Belmont.
Simon Belmont, and then it becomes Trevor Belmont.
Yeah.
It's the Belmont clan
Yeah,
that
right.
Fights the evil.
Yeah, which is usually Dracula. I mean, he has other monsters as well. And I don't know if you guys know this too, but on Netflix they also have a Castlevania anime series, which I've watched. I don't know if you gentlemen have watched it, but I thought it was pretty good.
Too, yeah.
It was pretty good overall. I wish there was more, and I hope they do come out with more. But we're actually gonna start talking about that stuff. So, Greg, why don't you take it off with the?
Well, basically, I do remember that, like, what made Castlevania very special. It was sort of like the reason why people have a love-hate relationship with what's the name of the sword fighting game that a lot of people, Darksiders or the
Dark Souls,
Dark Souls, and the games like Dark Souls, Nioh, and this new samurai game that just recently came out. The thing about it is that Castlevania was a very hard game. It had a lot of puzzles. It was multi-layered, which was great. I mean, granted, Mario back in the day had some multi-layered areas to go, but nothing to the level of Castlevania. A lot of hidden secret places. And the most interesting thing I noticed when I used to play the games was that if you went to an area and then came back, the monsters or bosses or whatever would always be there. Like they would always regenerate. So it was a tough game. It was a game where you had to watch yourself, and there really was no continuation. So I guess you could say that it was basically the medieval version. It was the tough medieval version of like how Metroid Prime was. So Mark, basically, how do you feel about the Castlevania as far as like how it is then, and then sort of like how you compare it to like now?
I think it's definitely one of the best series that became that gained a following over the years, even throughout every console. Throughout Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, PlayStation, PS2, NDS, each console pretty much had its own Castlevania game. Wherever it took place in the story, it was always something, as long as it was fighting evil. It could just be called Castlevania. Sometimes it wasn't always connected, but the elements were there.
Well, it definitely had a lot of spin-offs.
Definitely. I think that the important thing about the anime series is that it captures a lot of the style of the characters and the setting. It's good to note that one of the best parts of the second season is that they included some of the awesome songs from the soundtrack.
Right, yeah.
Where the first season didn't have those, and I think that's what could have probably improved that season. But the story and the character development in the first season was phenomenal. And the nice thing is, you can get through the first season in an hour because it's 20-minute episodes, 20-minute episodes.
Yeah.
I think the second one's a little bit longer, but it's only like 2 hours, so it's like watching a shorter movie and then a longer movie. But
put your mind at ease. Now there's no guarantee when this is coming up, but apparently because of the popularity of season 1 and the how well season 2 did and everything, they're already working on and creating season 3.
Oh, that's cool.
And season 3 is basically, it picks up exactly right where the end of season 2 is.
Well, what I thought was cool about the anime too is that it literally, it wasn't like, Castlevania, the first game remade. It pretty much was, they took elements from different ones, like Trevor Belmont, which was, I think he was from the third one or something like that. He wasn't the original main character.
The third one, yep.
Then they had the priest girl, I don't really remember her name, and then Alucard, which was a playable character in one of the Castlevanias. They all joined together. Yeah, they all joined together in it. So it was pretty cool. So if you're not like a hardcore like Castlevania fan, like I've only played maybe like 1 or 2 games my whole life, but the anime you still can appreciate it because they literally give you like the basic, like Dracula was like this. He wasn't really a bad guy. Then he became evil because of certain reasons. It really builds up for people who don't know the lore and maybe don't know what Castlevania is. So I feel like the anime is a good kind of like, brings you into the whole Castlevania lore. And on a side note, I think it's cool that at any video game I've ever played in my life, the main character uses a whip, which I've never seen that before, as like a deadly weapon.
Yep.
Right.
I think that's pretty cool. Other than, he has short swords and daggers, but like his main weapon is the bullwhip. And that just reminded me from Robot Chicken. He's like, ow, ow, ow.
Because it's been something that's been pranked on for a while, but let's be honest, like, spoiler alert, just a small spoiler alert in case you plan on watching the anime. In season 2, Belmont gets his signature weapon, which is, it goes from the whip to like a chain whip. Like it's like an actual chain made out of pure silver and stuff to kill the monsters. So to me, like the anime does the video games justice. Like it really holds true to it and whatnot.
Sure.
There's definitely a great quality to it because of how the creative process in adapting a video game, because not often are, as a lot of people realize, video game movies are not always that good because they take that player element out of it. Like, if you just watch the video game play on YouTube, you essentially get the story down, but it removes that, like, you have to find out, you have to take action, you have to get through the story. Whereas with this anime series, because of the style and the creativity behind it, they definitely did Castlevania justice as far as getting an adaptation. If more series became, if Netflix did it right and made other video game series into live, either live action or anime series, I think it'd be great because they definitely could tap into something really awesome in the way that a lot of film studios haven't been able to make very successful video game adaptations.
Right.
Well,
go ahead.
I'm not 100% on this, but I think I did read or hear somewhere that they were thinking about making a Metroid anime series, and done by the same guy who's doing Castlevania. He wants to jump on the Metroid project and stuff. So, once again, creating, expanding the popularity of the old school games.
And they're making a Zelda live action show, which I think is crazy.
They're talking about that. I definitely think that would be amazing because if they stylized it right and they just got all the key characters and everything with it, it would be phenomenal. I think.
We're gonna maybe do that for another topic. Talk
Yeah,
about that
yeah,
for our
definitely.
next video because that'd be kind of cool. So we can do more research on it.
For sure.
All right, guys. So our last topic is gonna be actually on Resident Evil. This is actually one of my topics that I decided to go over. Because I heard in the woodworks that because they're remaking Mortal Kombat as well, like they're remaking the movie series. I also heard that one of the people helping with the Mortal Kombat is also remaking Resident Evil from the bottom up. So I personally hope that this new director or whatever direction they go in, I hope they take it from the actual video games instead of doing it like the movies used to do, where they took elements from the game, but they were just like side characters, like Chris or Claire would be in it for like one movie just to have like the nostalgia of the game, but then it'd be based on Alice, which I like Mila Jovovich. I just don't care for her character for the whole series. I didn't like that. So
I mean, it's definitely worth noting that you know a series with what was it, six movies ended up being you had the original,
Mm.
you had Apocalypse, Extinction, Afterlife, Resident Evil Retribution, and then
Judgment Day or something
that
like
was
that.
Final Chapter.
I just know it like
Yeah, it
after
took a
the
while.
first or
Yeah,
second one,
yeah.
it started to go downhill. Like I think after
Yeah.
the third one, it got really bad. Literally, I felt like they just made like this crazy action zombie movie, and then they threw in like a familiar character, like
Yeah.
oh here's Claire over here, oh here's Chris over here, here's Leon. Like to me, I think it was the fifth movie or the sixth one. They literally threw in Leon and Barry. And first of all,
It was
Leon
the
and
fifth
Barry,
one.
yeah, don't interact that much
Retribution,
in the games except for that Game Boy
The
one.
Game Boy Color one, Resident Evil Gaiden.
It was hard because they did they tried to touch on it, like even the villains from the games, but they weren't included in the same setting that they were in the games. Like the video games, if they did a reboot and they were to adapt the first game, the full game, into a movie, I think it'd be great because even the first Night of the Living Dead was set in a small farmhouse. So if they were to make like a larger scale version of that,
Right.
where it was set in a mansion, and they included the parts that made the video games awesome, the puzzles, the villains that you had to fight certain ways, and I mean, I don't know if they'd ever go the route, but the way that the video games had multiple endings, if they were to ever have like you could choose, I mean, that would probably be like a home video feature.
Right.
I mean, if theaters ever ended up like letting the audience vote and choosing an ending,
that'd be
pretty
awesome.
awesome.
I always thought about that, like going to a movie and like you literally pay a movie and then you said, do you want to pay for this ending or do you want to pay for that ending? If you want both, you either have to pay for both or wait to come home. But I feel like if they want to do it right, I feel like they should shy away from what they did with the video games, make it more action based and make it more horror. Like you can have minor action like the gunfighting, the monsters, and all that stuff, but make it more like horror based as far as like there's more at stake than just like running around shooting zombies like nothing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Well, I mean, it's like when I'll tell you what, Capcom is finally doing it right when they did Resident Evil 2, the remake.
Yes.
For the PlayStation 4 and Xbox. Like the game's amazing. Like I've been playing Resident Evil games and horror games, all types of video games out there that are dark and suspenseful and a lot of like, scare pops and stuff like that, just like ones that really get you. This game took the cake because it makes you like you would be collecting bullets, right? And you would be like, oh right, I got enough. Now I feel like a boss. And then before you know it, you wasted half of them on a zombie when really you should have just started running away. Like this game really makes you feel like you're in it. And there's a couple of monsters that chase you. They actually come after you. You know what I mean? It's not like the old school games where you went into another room and they didn't follow you. It's like a different sequence altogether. This game is like it carries on from one end to another end and creating that possibility of like what would happen if zombies, monsters, what if this was real in like real life? Would you really fight them or would you actually run to the nearest room to see if that room brought you to another destination? Would you go around it and stuff? Because honestly, when they redo this series, I heard that due to how successful 2 was, they're going to do it again with 3, Nemesis, and One, not sure if it's going to be the same guys or, like you said, with the Mortal Kombat guy. Either way, they want to take one and bring it back to the way it felt when you played the old PS1 version, which was survival, full of scare, just like kind of like putting you on your edge because you have guns, but is that enough to survive? That's what they want you to feel like.
That's definitely a great point for sure. They seem to try, like, even though 21 years ago now,
Yeah.
Resident Evil
Yep.
2 came out, and that set a new bar, not just for the Resident Evil series, but for video games as a whole, with the way that they could create sequels that surpassed the original and just kept expanding the franchise. There were several, like, the score, the soundtrack to the Resident Evil games is key because those are.
I know you're big on the soundtracks and stuff.
There's like a song for each room you're in. There's a song for the save room. There's a song for the main hallway. When you hear those little, piano strokes or just whatever, however they created them, it's like an instant, like, I'm like, that brings me back 21 years.
Right.
It's crazy. And that, I think, was what they kept in mind when they created the HD remake of Part 2, and potentially what they could create with films. They could create like these great movies that have an awesome score to them that would, keep fans interested and really like capture the feeling of what these games are all about.
Prime example in this. There's this one kid that I like basically communicated with over YouTube. I was looking up the Resident Evil 2 soundtrack, and I'm talking about the original one, where you go into the library room. There's no zombies or monsters in there, but it's one of the creepiest background musics ever. It gets your blood pressure going. It gets you nervous.
Oh yeah.
And what's great is now in the new game, you can take the old music and put it over the new video game. And in this new video game, there are zombies in the library now. So now it's like the scenery with the zombies actually being there. It fits the music perfectly this time. It's funny how something that's in 1998 and then 20 years later, 2018, it actually connects very well to it.
Well, essentially, I guess the thing we can really take away from this is that, Resident Evil 2, the remake that came out recently.
January, yep.
Yeah, if they can do well with that, I mean, literally, they just took the game. They said, how can we take the best parts of the original and just throw a nice, modernize it or make it look more with better graphics? I feel like if they do something like that, I feel like they can easily do a really good movie series. Worst case scenario, I feel like Resident Evil would do better as like a TV series. I feel like you can have more characters,
Right.
more time to develop a story and make it more believable. You can have Chris, Leon, all the main characters all in at the same time. Instead of the movies, you have to pick and choose which one is more
sort
important.
of like Netflix's Black Mirror.
Yeah, kind of
like that. Yeah.
I think that was one thing that the 6 movies series that came out by Paul W.S. Anderson, like you were saying, like they were able to bring certain characters from the game series into it, but only in certain entries. It's like the continuity in that series was not very good.
Yeah, right.
I mean, Mila was the main character all the way through, but then you got introduced to Jill Valentine the way she was from Part 3 Nemesis in the second movie, but then you don't see her again until
the fourth one
at the end.
Yeah, right.
Because then the 5th one is
she's the bad guy. Then then they have Claire, and then they have Chris, and then they have not Claire for a couple ones. And she could it was so weird who they picked and choose. And then, like I said, I feel like the one where they had Leon and Barry, I literally feel like they're just showing everybody like, which Resident Evil character we use? We didn't use Leon or Barry. Let's throw them in there. I mean, that doesn't make a good. I don't even know. I never watched the last one. Was there a Resident Evil character in that one?
There was other characters in like Dr. Isaac from the other movies, but he wasn't really like part of the game series. I mean, the actors they got to play Leon and Barry and Chris and Claire were really decent. It might have also been their availability, but they also didn't write those characters out of the series very well. They just said, "Oh, they're gone."
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Which I thought that's what's so weird. Yeah. Like that's why I'm hoping that the remake they'll learn from their mistakes and not have they have the main characters not a random character, and then have the main characters interact with this person and make them minor characters.
Right. I think if they get the right people behind it, then I think it'd be awesome. Because I know that for many years it was Sony Pictures
Yeah.
who made them. If Sony's going to continue making them, maybe they get another like a smaller filmmaking company to work with.
Yeah.
And they get like a creative consultant who might have worked on the games, or at least fans or like writers or creators who are passionate about the games. Because that's one advantage I think the Silent Hill movie had, was that the director was an avid Silent Hill game fan. He actually kept a monitor with the game being able to play on set when he was directing, at least the opening scene. And then some scenes in that movie he took some liberties with, which were interesting for that story. But some of the most iconic scenes from the intro were adapted like scene by scene from the game. And having a director like Christoph Gans was phenomenal to direct Silent Hill. Unfortunately, the sequel didn't pan out. It didn't pan out because they got it. Like, Michael Bassett is a good director. He definitely has a very good style. I just don't know if the way that they did Silent Hill Revelation panned out the way that they were hoping, because of the way it changed a lot of things. Like they tried to take the story of Silent Hill 3 and make it the sequel to Silent Hill 1, the movie, and it just it didn't fit the same way. Like, it was there the same way the characters changed in the game series from part 1 to part 3, but it didn't translate as well into the movies. It was still entertaining. I mean, I enjoyed Silent Hill Revelation.
Well, entertainment is different than enjoying it.
Right, I mean, entertain. But I just meant that if they get the right creative team, if they get the right people backing the newer Silent Hill, like the new, Silent Hill, hopefully someday, but a reboot that's more confirmed and in the process of being made, they get the right people behind it, I think it'd be great.
For sure. All right, guys, so we're gonna wrap this video up. Let us know what you guys think. If you guys have any questions, or if you guys have your own topics you want us to talk about, leave a comment on the bottom below if you can. And don't forget to subscribe and tune in, guys. We're gonna try to do this maybe like twice a month, 3 times a month, depending on what we can do. But guys, let us know what you think of this video. Again, I'm Vince.
I'm Greg.
I'm Mark.
And that's our vlog. Thank you guys, and have a good night.
Peace.